In the early 2010s, during the peak of Spain's golden generation, there was a Wonderkid on the rise, who many believed would take the torch as the next great footballing mind. He was getting comparisons as a Spanish Zinedine Zidane. He had the flair, he had the vision, he had that rare spark that couldn't be taught. Not only would he be awarded in 2012 with the Golden Boy Award for his mesmerizing performances in carrying a historically terrible Málaga team into the Champions League, but he would also lead Spain to victory in the Under-21 Euros in 2013. Isco was the future of Spanish football. He was so sought after that Real Madrid would sign the young man that very same year, only further adding to his already incredible career trajectory at a young age. But suddenly, almost as quickly as he would rise, his career would reach a major plateau before things started to severely go downhill. What Lamine Yamal has done and is continuing to do right now is what many thought Isco was supposed to be destined for. But the saddest thing is that for Wonderkids who've been in the same position but lost everything due to injuries or other factors out of their control, many Real Madrid fans believe that Isco did it to himself. Fans called him a ball hog, a player who doesn't do what's needed, or even a guy who simply just lacks drive and discipline. Isco went from the spotlight of the footballing world to being thrown away to a mid-table team in Sevilla by 2022. At the age of 30, some genuinely believe that Isco was bound for an early and sad retirement, a future that a decade ago nobody would have ever imagined. But it wouldn't be until this 2024-25 season that Isco would completely come back to life from the ashes, playing some of the best football he's ever done in years, being the talisman of a red-hot Real Betis that now are on track to make club history, just like he did for Málaga all those years ago. This is not just a story of decline. However, this is the rise, the frustrating fall, and the revival of Isco. Because since his first year at Málaga, the 18-year-old Isco was already making a huge difference for his club. The season before, Málaga had finished in a mediocre 11th place. But with the addition of the electrifying young midfielder, Málaga would go on an incredible run all the way to 4th place and finish with a spot in the Champions League. Though it might not seem like it, 9 goal contributions from the teenage Isco was huge, and it would be those smallest margins that allowed them to finish ahead of Atletico Madrid. Because every time that Isco scored for Málaga, they would not lose a single match. He would build an even bigger name for himself, and he would have 7 goal contributions in 8 Euro qualifying matches for Spain. And by the end of the season, Isco was awarded with the 2012 Golden Boy Award. But the hype didn't end there. Next season, he would play even better for his club. He'd go on to have a total of 18 goal contributions at 19 years old, again with Málaga not losing a single match every time he scored a goal. And the cherry on top of the cake was when he would lead Spain to the Under-21 Euros title, where he would score in the quarterfinal against Netherlands, in the semi-final against Norway, and in the final against Italy, immediately falling under the limelight, as Spain were absolutely terrorizing world football at the time, and talks of a transcendent Wonderkid coming up to lead the next generation was everywhere. It's easy to see why in 2013, Real Madrid would go and sign who everybody believed was the next heir to Spanish football. The expectation was that he would become the heartbeat of the new era. But then Madrid did what they always did. They went big. That same summer, they would shatter records to sign Gareth Bale. And with his addition, Carlo Ancelotti had no choice but to move Madrid to a 4-3-3. Not only was Isco a younger talent, but he really played best like a traditional number 10. And for Ancelotti's formations, there wasn't all that much space for the youngster. Ancelotti also had an abundance of midfielders to choose from. Luka Modric, Xabi Alonso, Angel Di Maria, or even Samir Khedira. Isco was not going to get any significant playing time ahead of these guys. And it wasn't even that he played poorly. In fact, in his first season, he had 8 goals and 6 assists despite the limited starts. But for such a star-studded squad, talent, which Isco had plenty of, wasn't the only thing. It was about fit and about timing. He did, however, manage to play a decent amount of time in the Copa del Rey final, having the highest pass success rate of 92% on the squad. His first season at Madrid saw him with major silverware, like the Champions League title and the Copa del Rey trophy. A pretty good debut season by all means. His trajectory was promising. That was, however, until the next summer. Real Madrid's locker room was only going to get more packed. That summer, they would add Toni Kroos and James Rodriguez, one a deadly marksman passer, and the other costing 75 million euros and coming off a World Cup Golden Boot. Instead of more opportunity, Isco only saw more roadblocks. James Rodriguez, with the price tag and global hype, was a guaranteed starter, and for the midfield, Kroos and Modric were basically untouchable. And thus, Isco got pushed back to being a luxury option. Although injuries would give him more minutes than he expected, it was basically conditional, because when that Madrid squad was fully fit, Isco was rarely in the starting 11. And for his first few years, that was basically the pattern. Every time Isco gained any momentum, Madrid's structure would shift significantly, basically affecting him more than any other player on the squad. When Carlo Ancelotti was sacked and replaced by Rafa Benitez, again Isco had to start from zero. Simply put, for Real Madrid's formations and the players that they had, Isco always just seemed expendable. Unlike most of Real Madrid's midfielders, Isco was a very ball-dominant playmaker. For him to really succeed, he really had to hold the ball, causing him to slow down the game and stagnate the attack. And that's why, for many reasons, a lot of Real Madrid fans saw him as a ball hog, looking at his dribbles or overly cautious style of play where he would move backwards as a poor fit for the team. And during that very brief Benitez era, it definitely didn't help Isco when he had a pretty poor relationship with the manager. As during a match against Rayo Vallecano, while Isco was on the bench and Madrid were down 2-1, Benitez would notice Isco laughing while they were losing. And for that, well, for a few months, he barely got that much playtime. So when Zidane finally came to the club as manager, this was probably Isco's most opportune moment to find some playing time. But still, who would Isco really regularly replace? Kroos and Modric were out of the question, and Casemiro, well, for his role, Isco just didn't fit well. Sure, he was creative and crafty, but again, he really didn't fit Madrid's style of play, because what that squad did best was their ruthless counterattacks. And Isco's tendency to hold the ball back and not release it quickly didn't exactly make the most use of their firepower down the wings. In fact, over the years, Isco had so much inconsistent playtime that he wouldn't even be selected for Spain's Euro 2016 squad, even though he honestly probably should have. And it was around this time that initially people were starting to wonder what was going on with Isco. A lot of people were saying that he made a big mistake, as in hindsight, Isco should have definitely signed for a club like Barcelona instead. Their pace and style of play just suited him so much more. But in the 2016-17 season, Zidane would make a huge shift, opting out of a 4-3-3 and shifting to a 4-3-1-2. With this, Isco could finally play his natural position and the style that he did best in. And not surprising, this would be Isco's best season for Madrid. Not only would they win the La Liga and Champions League title, but they would also win the Super Cup and Club World Cup, with Isco even starting over Gareth Bale in the Champions League final, a final that was held in Bale's home country of Wales. Isco would end the season with 20 goal contributions in 42 matches. After all these years, it finally looked like Isco was going to be given a consistent role. But the following year, Isco's role would once more get diminished. With Dani Carvajal out for injury, Madrid's 4-3-1-2 formation that Isco played so well in had started to become really stagnant. That formation in itself is already very narrow, and without a fullback playing as wide as Dani Carvajal does, despite Isco playing his best in it, the formation had really started to become suboptimal. Madrid had an incredibly slow start, and they were getting killed out wide every time. Thus, for the first half of the season, Madrid had to change things up and put Isco back on the bench. Luckily, Carvajal would recover and the formation was in use once more, because when everyone was healthy, Madrid played incredibly well in this formation, and Zidane definitely trusted it enough to put Isco as a starter during the Champions League final. Of course, Real Madrid would win their third Champions League in a row. But the end of this season not only marked Ronaldo's departure from Madrid, it would also begin Isco's sunset for the squad. As Zidane would leave the club, Isco's role would only get smaller and smaller. There were also issues about Isco gaining a bit of weight and not being in the best form. This, paired with a few injuries and surgeries, would really diminish Isco's importance in the squad. Those first few years after Ronaldo and Zidane's departure from Madrid were pretty rough. But for Isco, they were even worse. By the time Carlo Ancelotti came back and won the Champions League title in 2022, Isco was not really an important player for the club whatsoever, making the fewest appearances he ever had for Madrid with only 17. That summer, Isco confirmed that he was leaving the club after 9 years. What started off as a career with insanely promising potential eventually ended up, at least on an individual level, not counting trophies, very underwhelming. Sure, you can argue he had a ton of club success, but for a wonderkid on the caliber that Isco was, he didn't nearly get the playing time that he really should have. Which brings you to the classic argument: would you rather win a few trophies as one of the most important players, or win a lot as someone who wasn't exactly all that necessary? Isco would then move on to Sevilla. However, just after a few months, Sevilla would terminate his contract, with manager Jorge Sampaoli saying Isco did not meet the club's expectations. And after that, for a half year, no club would sign Isco. That fall off is honestly pretty sad. Around this time, a lot of people were wondering if Isco was actually about to retire from football. He was in such poor fitness, poor form, and no club wanted him. However, at the start of the next season, Real Betis would give him a chance. It was after her second match for the club that he would score his first goal in over a year. Since then, what looked like a dying career was slowly starting to rise from the ashes. Though not exactly the best club in La Liga, Isco would play his absolute heart out for Real Betis. He would have a total of 18 goal contributions in 36 matches. But while those numbers might not be anything insane, without a doubt, Isco is the engine of the club. In fact, last season, Isco had the most man-of-the-match performances for any club in La Liga. Isco won 19 Man of the Match awards in 28 La Liga matches. And this 24-25 season, Isco is absolutely carrying his club. He and the GOAT Antony are playing incredible football, as Real Betis are absolutely red hot, starting off the season a bit slow. But now they are in incredible form, winning 6 straight matches and being incredibly close from stealing the 4th place spot and potentially playing Champions League football next season. After all these years, Isco finally found a team and a system, ironically playing under Manuel Pellegrini, the same manager during his Málaga breakout all those years ago. Isco finally has the freedom to play the way he plays best, and although he isn't as young, he's definitely a lot wiser. He doesn't hold the ball as long as he used to, his decision making is a lot more intelligent, and overall he's playing at his pace, putting on midfield masterclass after midfield masterclass. If he played like this more during his Madrid days, he would have definitely seen a lot more starting time. And for whether or not he made a mistake going to Real Madrid, who can say really? But as someone who's following Isco closely during his younger days, it's really nice to finally see him leading a team and balling out. And hey, I might be a little biased, but I'm really hoping that Real Betis can continue this amazing form and possibly steal that 4th place in the next coming matches. Also right now, Real Betis are in the quarterfinal stages of the Conference League. And if Isco and Antony not only take 4th place in La Liga, but also manage to win the Europa Conference League, well, I'm sure I speak for many when I say we'd absolutely love to see that.